Hi, I'm Shain, a New York Jewish mom, young in spirit, but with decades, so many decades of experience.
And I'm Sarah, her daughter, and a practicing therapist. And this is Listen to My Mother,
a podcast where we answer your real-life questions with 2 points of view, one rooted in motherly instinct and
one rooted in clinical training.
You'll get guidance, support, maybe a little tough love, but always from the heart.
And if you'd like us to answer your question on air, head to the link in our show notes and send it our way. We want to hear any questions you have.
And now it's time to
Listen to My Mother. Okay, we are now recording for our first official episode of Listen to My Mother, because you're my mother. Say hi, Mother.
Hello, darling. I love you.
I love you too. So yeah, we're going to start off with talking about this conversation we had a couple of days ago about an experience that my nephew, your grandson, had at school, which I have only heard about it third hand from you. Like, you heard it from my sister, your daughter, then you told me. So you tell the story of what happened to your grandson at school.
My grandson, your nephew.
I don't, should we give him a fake name?
We'll just refer to him as Jay.
Right, so they call him Jay on social media, so we can call him
Right.
Jay.
Jay is also a very, very special child in that he is a very high-functioning autistic young man. Due to his very, very high intelligence, he is amazingly focused on things that interest him, and he's also very focused on things that may upset him. Mm-hmm. So he was in class, he's in a regular class, and they were playing, I guess they were done with their work or whatever, so they were allowed to play a game, and it involved, as far as I understood, direction, east, north, west, south. So somebody decided their official name in the game was going to be Kanye West because they were West. So the other kid said, I'll be Kanye East, and I'll be Kanye South, and I'll be Kanye North. And he got very upset because he is very, very aware of the anti-Semitic language and actions that Kanye West has taken. Very aware of his ad at the Super Bowl and what that involved. I don't know if everybody is aware of it. So we had the conversation when I was telling you about it, that I felt he was unique as an 11-year-old, understanding and being affected by what is happening in the world around him. And you had said...
Right. You had said that, like, you thought it was unique for a Jewish child to be as aware of what was happening as he was.
Yes.
And I do not feel that that is true. I think that Jewish parents are probably having conversations with their Jewish kids about what is happening in the world that affects us as Jewish people. And like you said, that you think that parents are probably going to be protecting their kids more, shielding them from who Kanye is and what Kanye is doing. And my feeling is that the majority of, like, Kanye's biggest fans are from my generation, from, like, they're millennials. Like, we grew up with Kanye. And they're the ones who are going to have, like, middle school aged kids now. So there's almost like a betrayal happening from their favorite artist. That's like, how could you do this? Like, I mean, Jewish kids, just like any kid, were growing up in the early 2000s listening to Kanye's music. I mean, I remember Kanye's Workout was a song that came out when I was, like, I don't know, 11. And that was, like, in the world, that was out there. We all knew it. And so, like, we've grown up with him. And, I mean, I'm a young millennial, but, like, older millennials who grew up with Kanye, like, they're the ones whose kids are in middle school now. And that they're they're very aware of who Kanye is. So their kids are probably very aware of who Kanye is. Their kids were probably listening to Kanye when they were in utero. And so, like, there's conversations that are probably happening around that.
My experience, and I put it based on my experience, that American Jewish families are so frightened today of being Jewish in this environment that they are not so open with their children about where anti-Semitism is coming from. I think it's a conversation they're not having. I could be totally wrong. And I'm seeing it from a grandparent's point of view. I am with my contemporaries are the grandparents of these children, and I hear the way they speak about their fear. And my sense is they're not having these conversations past, I'm afraid. Maybe, I don't even know if they're having it with their children, let alone their grandchildren. I feel that Jay is unique in that he is so aware of what is around him.
I think you are also not taking into account the access that 11, 12-year-old kids have to the internet right now. Like, regardless of what parents are talking to them about, these kids are on social media. They're on TikTok. They're on Instagram. Like, it is being fed to them. Everything that Kanye is doing, everything that Kanye has said. Like, the access that they have to what is happening in the world is, like, I mean, more than when I was 11, and definitely more than when my siblings were 11. And for the listener who doesn't know, my sister was 20 and my brother was 18 when I was born. My parents were in their late 40s. So
mid-40s, don't push it.
Okay, you were maybe mid, dad was late. That's fine. But that, like, very different eras of parenting, which is also very different from the era of parenting right now.
So I am very interested in hearing, you're putting out this survey of Jewish parents of middle school age children. I'm really interested in seeing the results that come back from your survey.
Yeah, so far we've gotten 6 responses, and by the time we record again, hopefully there will be a lot more responses, and we can have information to work with.
Excellent. I'm interested in being told I'm wrong.
Well, I just want to also introduce that we have another guest here today, that my aunt, your sister, is with you right now, and she's listening to this conversation, and I've been seeing her nodding every time I talk and shaking her head every time you talk, so I'd love to know her perspective.
Of course, because she seems to agree with you.
Let's put it this way. What I know of Jay is that, indeed, his understanding of the details is probably unique for an 11-year-old. All right, because he can get so much into the weeds of things, all right? But I agree with you that social media, my view as a retired teacher, is killing our kids. And they are exposed to it at earlier and earlier and earlier ages, and they know a lot of things they deeply do not understand or fathom. But they are hearing it anyway, and very often they're also mimicking it. So in that sense, I agree with both of you.
Well, can I add that, granted, they are not Jewish, but in Jay's class, 4 children were playing this game, Kanye West, Kanye East, Kanye South, Kanye North. I will guarantee you they have no clue that Kanye has been putting out anti-Semitic rhetoric and the other actions that he's taken. And that's right there in front of us, that these 4 children were using it in a way that he's popular.
Yes, I agree that I don't think that non-Jewish kids know about Kanye's anti-Semitism. I agree with that. Because either their parents probably know, and either their parents don't care because it doesn't affect them, or agree. So I agree that the non-Jewish kids probably don't know, but that was not the original conversation we had. The conversation we had was about Jewish kids.
Right. I still stand by that Jewish parents of kids that age will not be having these conversations with their child or exposing their child. So it'll be interesting to see the survey. When Jay went to his teacher and said, "This is making me uncomfortable," and her reaction was, "Why would this make you uncomfortable?" And Kanye West is anti-Semitic. And she said, "I don't think so."
Well, again, like, I think that the non-Jewish world in a lot of ways are not paying attention to this kind of stuff. Okay. But that was not our original conversation.
No, I still hold by American Jewish parents. As frightened as they may be right now, I really think they're not having these conversations with their children. But we'll leave that at this point and wait for the survey results. Hopefully there will be enough people responding that we can actually know what people are thinking. Yeah. So we'll move on to bigger and better things for now.
Right. We'll move on to the actual premise. New York Jewish mom gives advice from her place of wisdom and is accompanied by her clinically trained therapist daughter. And what that might mean is that sometimes we talk about Jewish issues because it pertains to us, but also that we're very general advice giving as well, which we can move into the submission that we got, which I will read. Okay. Dear Jewish mom and daughter, I am burned out. I am a healthcare worker who had the hardest 5 years of my life. During COVID, I was quite literally on the front line from day one in an urgent care, then later at mass vaccine sites. I was never at home during COVID. In 2020 to 2022, I worked harder and more hours than ever caring for patients. I became an outspoken vaccine advocate, which earned me a lot of hate online and from friends and family, but there are people who are vaccinated and possibly alive today because of my outspokenness, so I have no regrets. During the middle of this, my family of origin was rocked by abuse allegations. I immediately took the victim's side, and again, I have no regrets, but there was a giant rift. I experienced a sudden loss of a familiar support system. Just when things seemed to finally be getting better, I became pregnant with twins and then later lost both fetuses one at a time. It's been just over a year since the miscarriages and there's nothing new going on, but I am burnt the F out. I want to stay home, I want to make watercolors and bake some bread. It's not a good time to take time off work because our company is going through a merger right now and I could easily find myself edited out of my job, which I need. When I have free time, it gets sucked up by events, friends, things to do. How do I communicate to friends who are good people, who love me, and are fun to be with that it's not them, it's me? I don't need another Super Bowl party. I need to bake some brownies in my house. I am burnt out on conversation, fun, and leaving the house. Maybe this is social isolation. Maybe I'm a little depressed, and is that okay? Can I have permission to just say no to everything that is not literally essential to keeping my job, which is social and requires lots of talking by nature? I feel guilty for not hanging out, but I feel exhausted when I do. I don't want to ruin my relationships by not showing up, but I honestly am so burnt out I don't feel like I can show up authentically. I'm just punching the time card until I get to go home to my slippers. Can I just have an antisocial, you're allowed to be a bear in your cave for 6 months, get out of jail free card? Can I say no to everything for a little while? I've tried being honest with my friends that I'm not doing well, but they are nice about it and then kind of expect me to be fine 7 to 10 days later, and I'm not. I'm chronically burned out. I'm also tired of being the one who is having a hard time. I don't want to complain. I don't want to say, yeah, it sucks, because it's exhausting and negative to always be that friend. I want to be the fun friend again, like I was in 2019. This was from Kelly, and she described feeling smothered, tired, and trapped.
Poor Kelly. I mean, really, this is so much loss for her. Just being, I know other healthcare people who were working during COVID and the overwhelming amount of death that they faced on a daily basis, and advocating one way or the other for masks, no masks, vaccine, no, caused such a rift, as she says, with even very, very close people. So she has no regrets, which is a positive thing, but loss is loss. She's not only experienced the loss of people in her care, but the loss of relationships because of her positions. So it's loss upon loss. And has the addition of taking sides in a family rift, more loss. Losing babies, having a miscarriage, a loss that's beyond, because it's your own body betraying you somehow when you thought you were going to have life, and it ends up being lost. There is this is years upon years of loss, and this is burned out. Burned out is the least of it. Well, not the least, but it's just part of it. The amount, I know I experienced a miscarriage just once. It was one baby. It was very early in the pregnancy, but the sense of loss and grief and sadness was over. I'd never felt anything quite like that. It was, it took over. I found myself, I could be washing the dishes and tears are rolling down my face that I don't even know are happening because the loss is so great. So to lose twins on top of all of this it's exhausting to have to smile and keep going because your friends expect you to. That's an overwhelming request for wellness and somebody who's really suffering from so much loss. So she's asking, can I have permission to just say no to everything? If you need permission, honey, you've got it. If that's something you need, you have my permission to bow out. But it's not something you really need to get from other people. This is something you have to take in for yourself and give yourself the time. And if you need help to deal with all of this, take it. Find somebody who can help you navigate this. This is too deep. This is too hard. This is especially since you say you've lost familiar support. If the people who should be helping you, just listening to you and allowing you to have that space without making demands on you emotionally, if they're not available to you, you have to go out and find somebody who can do that for you. And if that's a therapist, it's a therapist. If it's a best friend, if it's even, just somebody who's... One of the things I did find in my own life when I recently had a pretty severe back surgery, which incapacitated me. And I found out that people who were peripheral to my circle of friends stepped up in a way I never expected. People who came to bring me food, to sit with me because I couldn't go out, and just stay a couple of hours and chit chat. And when I said I'm exhausted, knew enough to leave and let me rest. People you don't even expect may be the ones that come into your life to give you that kind of support if you're open to it, without making demands on you. Those people who are your friends, who are making these demands on you, they may or may not be there once you figure out how to get help for yourself. Once you find a support system that really does support you, those other people may not be so important to you if they can't see what you need. And on that note, I know you want to be the fun friend again, but it may not be available right now. Sometimes it just isn't. And it'll come back, but first you need to get past this, and you have to recognize that right now you need help, but it's got to be something you seek for yourself. And it'll be there if you open to it and don't allow these other people making demands on you to suck whatever energy you have left. And I will turn this over to the therapist to tell me how wrong I am.
No. A lot of that was, I agree completely. And I'm glad that you mentioned the thing about the fun friend at the end, because my curiosity around like that concept of being cast as the fun friend is kind of like, is that a role you've taken on yourself, or is that something that other people have put on you? And I'm wondering if, like, in that friend group, if you are seen as the fun friend, does that mean that there is no space for you to also be a full person who has the full range of emotions? Like, if they're expecting you to show up in one way, that when you show up in the way you're showing up right now, there's like no space for that, which is not the most complete friendship. That there's no room for you to actually be a person. And like, I'm wondering kind of like also if there's like low effort friendships where you can just kind of be in space with someone and sharing space and sharing time without having to talk or show up in a certain way. You can just bake brownies together, bake brownies and never talk, bake brownies and watch a movie, like bake the bread you want to bake, like all those types of things without there having to be any expectation on the specific way that you're showing up. And I heard that, like, you want to be the fun friend again. And of course, we all want to be the fun friend, but sometimes we can't be. And like my mom was saying, like, that might not be accessible to you right now. And that's fine. So it's like kind of finding ways that you can have your own fun without having to be quote unquote the fun friend. Also, like, you had said that you tried to explain to your friends that you're not in a great place right now, and they were like very understanding, but then within a couple weeks expected it to be over. So I also kind of want to just give a little education on what burnout is. That it's not just being tired. It's not just being worn out. It is actually like a psychological, physiological syndrome. It's not in the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is what we use in most places in the United States, but it is in the ICD, which is the International Classification of Disorders. And it is like listed as a syndrome in the ICD. So this is like, it's an actual medical thing that can have neurological effects, basically. Like, it can change your brain when you're burnt out. And it sounds like the 5 years that you've been through, this is it, like, it's burnout. It's also more than burnout, but it's also like clinical burnout, which basically, like, research has shown that burnout can have the same effects on your brain and body that PTSD does. You're having a trauma response. The prefrontal cortex can change from burnout. Basically, activity can reduce, so your judgment is impaired. Brain fog, poor concentration, impaired problem solving, like, these are all things that can happen when you're burnt out. The amygdala, which is where the emotions are, like, becomes overactive. So you become more sensitive to perceived threats. So, like, there's more irritability, there's more emotional exhaustion. Your nervous system, basically, generally, like, we're in fight or flight when there's a threat, but generally we should be in something called, like, rest and digest, which is, like, when we're calmer, we are kind of, like, integrating the thing that happened in the threat and, like, learning about what happened there, and our body adapts accordingly. But when you're in burnout, you're in chronic physiological arousal. You're constantly in that fight or flight place, which we know from, like, studying generational trauma. If you're being in abusive homes as a child and having neglected child, like, that, living in a constant state of fight or flight can permanently change your biology. And it basically, what can happen for people with burnout who are constantly in this fight or flight place, you can get, like, stuck there, which can lead to emotional numbness, basically, and detachment from your world, which looks like depression. So you had mentioned in your submission that, like, is this depression? I mean, yes, there are pieces of it that are going to look a lot like depression, but burnout can look like depression. It can manifest in your body and in your behaviors similarly to depression. But I want to go back to the amygdala and how you're more sensitive to perceived threats, and specifically kind of tying this into your friend groups of, like, if there is a constant expectation for you to show up in a certain way, eventually your brain's going to start perceiving that as a threat, and you're going to have a fear response, basically, to seeing your friends. That will manifest as basically showing up less and less like yourself because you don't feel safe in your friend group. So my suggestion would be, there's kind of two courses of action here. You can either take all this information, and if these are friends who you want to be connected with and who you trust to show up for you in the way that you need friends to be showing up for you right now, kind of taking all this information, going and being like, this is what I'm going through right now. My body is in a constant state of stress. I need compassion right now. I don't need expectations. Like, can you work with me through this time? And it can take 6 months to a year to recover from burnout symptoms, maybe longer, if they're not being managed properly. But the option of kind of going to your friends, explaining the depth of what you're experiencing right now and seeing if they can show up for you. But also, my mom was saying before, like, finding people who can show up for you that way, which the moment that she said that, I was like, that sounds exhausting. Like, if you are already in this place of burnout, trying to find new people who are supportive can be exhausting. Similarly, trying to explain to the people who you by default should be wanting to show up for you can also be exhausting. Like, you're kind of fighting for your friends to be friends, basically. And that also is exhausting. So, like, that's one option, pros and cons.
Very briefly, one word I haven't heard yet is grief. Mm-hmm. From her. But I mean, for us to talk about grief and the fact that it is that she has, I don't know how many of her friends are nurses that had to face COVID and the dying patients every day, and this her family, the loss of the fetuses. This woman is steeped in grief, and we live in a culture that when you lose somebody in your immediate family, you're lucky to get a week off of work, right? Whereas we know in more primal, less sophisticated societies, indeed, it's a year that you are almost taken care of through different stages of grief. It's assumed that you will go through stages of grief while people take care of your kids, and things of that nature, in a more communal or collective situation. So this is the get over it society. This is the snap out of it society, right? And this woman is just kind of like, what I hear is that she is just weighted down with very good reasons to be in grief. And she needs to also give herself permission to be in grief as well.
Right.
As well as to remove herself from things that are too much fun right now,
right,
because these are antithetical to each other. She needs to be allowed to grieve. And the little energy she has is to do a good job at work. And that is incredible that she can still do that. And that's what she should look at as sort of, let's say, that's where I need to put all my best physical, emotional, and mental energy, and then allow herself to collapse the other 75% of the time.
And like that word permission, and I talk about this with my clients a lot, and I think I even have it on my website. One of the most important things that we can do for ourselves when we are kind of working towards change or growth or whatever it is that we're looking for from a therapeutic relationship is is being able to give ourselves grace, because we are human and we live human lives and we're not robots and we're not perfect, and like there will be days that we don't live up to the standards we've set for ourselves, and that is okay because we are human, and it is unrealistic to constantly be living up to an incredibly high standard that we set for ourselves, and it is really common to set a much higher standard for yourself than you do for anyone else. So to be basically, Kelly, if any of your friends came to you and said, hey, I'm having a tough time, I can't be the fun friend right now, would you expect them to show up in 2 weeks? Like, expecting yourself to show up more regularly now isn't fair to yourself. Make space for the experience that you're having. Make space for what, like, the grief and the exhaustion that you're going through. The first option is kind of being very open with your friends about the extent of what you're experiencing, but also kind of going back to this idea of, if you start to program your brain to perceive hanging out with friends as a threat, the answer might be to just not engage with friends, because that sort of like long-term conditioning, even once you are out of the burnout and you've like calmed down, it's like now like you're still going to have this fear of friendship. So it might just be beneficial in the long run, just kind of take a step back without even having to explain it, just to protect yourself, so that there is the potential for re-engaging when you are able to re-engage, and not risking that, like, when you're ready to re-engage, these are not people you want to re-engage with, which might happen anyway, but just to kind of keep that in mind.
That was another thought that I had, which is, if you withdraw from this friend group to save yourself, to be okay with yourself, taking as much time as you need to do that, and once you've started to feel more rested, more available, more able to then venture out again into your life, look around, see who's left from that friend group. The people who are left may be people who are important to you and will be there for you, or there may be no one. And that's a matter of saving yourself.
Right. That's the other thing. Like, the tough love piece of this is almost like, if your friends aren't willing to make space or understand the very serious thing that you're going through right now and have been for the last 5 years, they're not actually your friends. They're like using you for whatever energy you bring as the fun friend. They're not actually there for you as friends. So they might not be the support system that you need. And I know that you had mentioned that there was a loss of like that familiar support system, whether it's friends, family, through the abuse thing that happened in your family, or having been so vocal about vaccines, that like there was a lot of loss of support. And I'm almost wondering if like the friend group that you're talking to now is maybe just like out of default because they're who was left. But either way, it's just kind of like there's been so much loss, and this might be another loss of these friends. So that's something to also kind of think about.
Yeah. One of the things that jumped out at me was this idea of when she goes out to be with friends, I'm just punching the time card until I can get home to my slippers. So you're not even able to show up. You show up physically, but obviously not in the fun friend anyway. You're concerned about being the complainer. You're concerned about being the friend who is needy, but this group is not valuing that piece of you. Everything that we've said before just jumps out even further. This is not the place for you to be right now.
And right now, also, with everything else that you are experiencing, the burnout, the grief, just the exhaustion, depression symptoms, all of that, like the energy that you do have really should be prioritized for things that you enjoy. Bringing some semblance of joy into your day-to-day. And if it's not going out and exhausting yourself with friends, then don't do that. I mean, that's like the whole thing about like creature comforts. Like that's what we need when we're really not okay. It's like, what are your creature comforts right now? What are the things that actually fuel you so that you can continue to show up? What's going to like bolster you back up as opposed to keep draining you repeatedly? Like if every time you do something that gives you a little bit of energy and then you go and drain it on something you don't enjoy, you're just bottoming out every day. So like instead, like when you have a little bit of energy that you've refueled, use that energy to do something that you do enjoy so that it continues to fuel you, not bottoming out at the end of every day.
Sometimes it's hard when you're in this place to figure out what you do enjoy. It's hard to find it.
Well, just very quickly, it sounds like baking brownies would give her some joy. All right. It could be watching the sunset for 5 minutes, 10 minutes a day. That also wanted to ask was, aren't there groups like a support? There must be support groups of people who are literally just like, it's about grief. And I can't imagine that there wouldn't be something for the medical personnel as well who went through all these years.
There for sure is. Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be support. I mean, I don't know where Kelly is located, but there's definitely online options if she's located somewhere very rural that doesn't have these offerings. But there definitely are like support groups for people in the medical field who have been on the front lines since COVID started and just have not had a chance to rest. There's also support groups for people who've had miscarriages. And there's also support groups for people who are experiencing burnout. That's probably going to be the least common of the three, but it is out there if you look for it. Medical personnel and miscarriages, those are very common support groups.
Right. If they're not available locally, you're sure to find something online.
100%.
Some kind of Zoom group.
Yeah, absolutely. I also am curious because there was a pregnancy, and I'm wondering if there's a partner. Was there a potential co-parent? Where is that person showing up in all of this? Which, like, there's always the potential that people are getting pregnant on their own. That's definitely possible, and that's potentially what I will do someday, so that is an option. But statistically, more likely that there is a partner somewhere in the mix, and I want to know where they're showing up or not showing up in this dynamic. Are they a good support system? Are they helping? Are they helping to fuel, or are they draining? Like, kind of, where are they in this whole dynamic? Because there was no mention of this person in the submission at all. And I also want to just say, like, a little personal, the mention of that there are probably people who are vaccinated and alive because of your outreach. And I want to just take a moment for that, because that is so hard to do. And especially in, like, 2020 to 2022, that basically made you, like, public enemy number one to be speaking out in favor of vaccines. And so I want to just kind of have a moment of congratulations for that kind of work and gratitude for that kind of work, because I think it's so important that there are a lot of social media warriors that were out there being like, you must vaccinate. I know I was one of them, but, like, I don't come from a medical field. I don't really have the foundation for that. So for the people who were in the medical field who were already exhausted from doing the work and then still doing the extra work during their off hours at home, by speaking out in favor of vaccines, I think definitely moved the needle a lot more than anyone else really could towards higher rates of vaccination. So thank you for that.
I just, flashes back to my own personal experience, but that's only one person and one experience. When I had my miscarriage, which was one child and very early in the pregnancy, I found there was absolutely almost zero emotional support for that. Mm-hmm. It's like, if it's not happening to you, other people don't get it unless they too have experienced a miscarriage. Mm-hmm. Especially since it was so early, it was like, it wasn't even it was a baby. It was my baby.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's like, it's interesting. And this could take us into a whole different debate about like right. abortion versus miscarriage and like, but there is also grief with abortion, that it's like, because it's not a baby, but it is the potential for your child. So even if you choose not to have the child, if you choose to have the abortion, you're not killing a baby, but you are losing the potential of what could have been your child. And it's the same thing with a miscarriage, right? Like, yeah. You're losing a fetus, but you're also losing the potential.
Right. Because as soon as I found out that I was pregnant, and I was at the time, I was 46 when I gave birth to you. Mm-hmm. I was 45 when I had that miscarriage, because you came right afterwards. Yeah. You were the gift of my life. But the miscarriage that I had so early, it's not a baby yet. Yes, it's the potential. But in my heart and my mind, it was my baby. Mm-hmm. It was my baby because I wanted it.
Right.
I was a 45-year-old woman who was so happy to have another life in my life. So it was a great loss, but other people didn't. It's just, there was not the support.
Yeah.
So my point being that I did not have people emotionally supporting me and saying, we see that you have a loss. I cried by myself all the time afterwards.
Yeah, what was Dad's reaction to your miscarriage?
He was loving and caring for about 48 hours. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then it was done for him.
Well, something that I'm curious, because at that point in your marriage, you weren't talking about anything. Like, you and him were not having conversations about emotional experiences really at all. And something that does happen for men who are losing the potential child from miscarriages, like there is such a sense of grief, but there's almost like, I can't make space for my grief because it didn't happen to my body. Like, you need to be able to have your grief without having to carry my grief. So then it like manifests as, well, we just don't talk about it. So I'm almost wondering, it's like you saw it as, well, 48 hours later he was fine, but I'm wondering if like 48 hours later he like wasn't fine but couldn't be there with you.
I will guarantee you he was fine.
Well, maybe we need to get him in here next time and ask him about it. Anyway, sorry to hijack your submission, Kelly, with a talk about abortion and miscarriages. So I want to just also say thank you for putting this in our hands without knowing who we are and being the first person, almost like our guinea pig for our first episode. So that's really, really brave. And thank you for that as well.
Since you received the submission, Sarah, do you have the venue by which it came? Do you have a way to reach out to Kelly at all and say, do you want to watch this or listen or whatever?
So I didn't collect any contact information on the submission form, but I did ask, like, how did you hear about the podcast? And she said Instagram. So it maybe came from my Instagram.
Obviously, I guess, be the place where once this podcast is presented, you would present that link on Instagram. And
yeah, so I have created an Instagram for the podcast. There is nothing on it yet. I haven't posted anything yet because we don't have anything to post yet because we have done nothing. But by the time this airs, it probably will have things on it. So it's just at Listen to My Mother on Instagram. And by the time we actually publish this and it's out to be listened to in the world, it will have content on it. So no idea what that'll be yet. The people who listen to this will know before we know right now. So weird time travel thing that's going to happen. But yeah.
I enjoyed this very much. First of all, I get to talk to you, who I love very, very much. and just gives us another way to connect and hear each other. And I'm very proud of you, and I'm very impressed with your knowledge.
Thank you.
And cut it out. Stop being smarter than me. So,
It's not smarter. It's a different, we have different information. Like,
yes, for sure.
That's the whole premise, right? Is that you have so much more life experience and you have so much wisdom just from what you've experienced in your life. And I have very specific training. So it's very different types of information.
And I will say, even in your youth, and you are young compared to me.
I am a youth.
You are a youth. You too have a lot of life experience already, which brings you to a very interesting place of a combination of your own life experience and your training. And I value what you bring to this very, very much.
Thanks, Mama.
And Anna has something to say.
And can I say that you talked about your mother's wisdom, but can I suggest that your youthful wisdom is that you chose to include your mother in this. That's your wisdom.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's very important too, that you respect the intergenerational relationships that are here. And I don't know if this helps Kelly, but instead of her friends, is there somebody, in her world that doesn't even have to be a family member, but that is indeed older than her, another generation, someone that she might be able to, that I don't know if that exists for her, but if it did, it could be another avenue to speak with somebody of another generation that's been through a lot and probably been through a lot of this.
Yeah.
And really, Anna's making me think in terms of, I have had such an array of experiences in my life. I was married to the same man for 54 years. So I've never experienced divorce and breaking up of a family or what that brings into one's life. But within 54 years of marriage, I feel like I'm on my sixth husband. And there has been growth and loss of growth, and there's been an array of experience just getting through one's life, and family illness and death and changes of careers and new friends and new growth and new loss. It's been over decades, and you learn or you don't learn, but it's available.
I want to say also, like you said, like you've been married to the same man for 54 years, but you feel like you've had 6 husbands. And there's an Esther Perel quote, which I love and I use with my clients all the time, which is, most of us will have 2 or 3 marriages in this life, and if we're lucky, they're with the same person. Because like it is, I mean, she works so much in infidelity, which is what I do also. Yes. And her perspective, which is similar to my perspective, is that infidelity does not have to be the end of the relationship, but it is the end of that relationship. Like you can have, your marriage can continue legally with the same person, but it will be a totally different marriage.
Absolutely. And if you live long enough, you'll experience it all.
And I think, like, I talk about this with clients a lot, especially clients who are debating whether or not they're going to leave their marriages or stay in their marriage and work on their marriage. We're in a time now in our society now where it is so much easier to leave a marriage than it ever has been before. And that, like, divorce rates are going up because it is easier to leave. But there's also, like, I'm thinking of one client in particular who is not happy in their marriage, but looks at their parents, and then, like, they went through a phase where they weren't happy, but now they're very happy because they just, like, kind of ignored it and got through it. And I asked the client, I was like, is it okay? Like, do you feel comfortable if I share a personal story? And they said, for sure, share your story. So I told them about you, and I said, like, my parents have been married for 54 years. They probably should have gotten divorced, like, 7 times over that 54 years. But they got to a point where now, like, they are happier than they ever have been before. They're more connected than they ever have been before. But they had to live through misery for decades to get to that point. So it's kind of like weighing the pros and cons of, like, do you want to be with your partner 20 years from now happier, but that could mean 20 years of misery to get there, but it is the most solid relationship you could imagine? Or do you want to get out now before you live through 20 years of misery and take your chances on finding something else. Kind of like there's no right answer, and there's pros and cons to both. Like serious pros and cons to both. Not just like, well, this might take a little bit longer, but whatever. Like you could be miserable and maybe happy, and the happiest you could imagine, or you could save yourself this guaranteed misery for the potential of something different that makes you happier now, but won't have the history or the shared children or anything that like this relationship had. So and for some people, the right thing to do is to get out because they're never going to reach that point of happiness. And for some people, the right thing to do is stay in and work through it and get to that point of happiness. But you have absolutely no idea when you're at the moment in time when you have to make the decision. So there is no right answer.
Which is true, because I feel that our marriage, we were meant to stay together through all of it. We tried. We're very good at doing things together. We do projects together, whatever. We're very good as a team.
Except for the sale.
The sale, yes. Forget that. That's a whole other thing. But we're very good at figuring things out. The only thing we couldn't figure out was how to separate. Mm-hmm. And we tried. We just couldn't figure it out. But so we end up, we're one example, one side of what you were talking about. And I just met a woman recently who was married 3 times. The first 2 times were a disaster. And she was never going to marry again. And she met a man. She married him. They're together now 10 years or 12 years. And she is in heaven. Mm-hmm. It took the 3rd time to find somebody who was able to value her and give her what the first 2 husbands were incapable of doing. So, who knows?
I want to congratulate Kelly for knowing what is wrong with her. Okay, right now. I was a very, very, very young Mary, and really way too young. Okay, I was the kid having kids. But when I was abandoned and when my marriage ended, I was in a state of dissociation from prior childhood trauma. It took me 14 years to finally get over. I literally, it felt like 12, 14 years to get over the grief that I was not allowing to emerge. Instead, I was just okay until I wasn't okay and had a breakdown in my 30s, a serious breakdown in my 30s. So I want to congratulate Kelly. She's older than I was at that time, of course, but I want to congratulate her for knowing what is wrong right now and putting herself out there to try to heal herself and get advice and fix this for herself. So really, I want to congratulate you, Kelly, for doing this for yourself and not just going off into dissociation and being the friend and the fun friend and showing up and absolutely being a hologram of yourself. So congratulations for that.
That feels like a good place to end. So what do you think, Mom?
Okay. Currently, I am in Florida. Currently, you are in Denver. Mm-hmm. Denver's a city, Florida's a state. I'm not sure how that...
Sure is, yep.
But from across the world, across the country, we send you love.
Yeah. And we want to thank our special guest, Anna, for joining us today.
From Maine.
From Maine, yes. We're all over the continental United States here today. But thank you both. I'm Sarah.
I'm Shain.
And this has been Listen to My Mother.
If you enjoyed this episode, please consider leaving a positive review and subscribing to us on your favorite platform.
And if you'd like the chance to listen to my mother, head to the link in our show notes, which is currently bit.ly/listentomysubmission. That's bit.ly/listen-to-my-submission and submit your question.
No question is off limits.
And don't forget to follow our journey on Instagram at Listen to My Mother or at whatsthepoint.therapy.
Thanks for listening. Talk to you soon.
Bye, Mama.
Bye, baby.